I have a confession to make. I mostly grew up with a single parent. I watched her mentally split herself into two to compensate, and honestly, it was quite tough on her. It was also somewhat tough on me too, but we'll get to that later. I say that because not many kids' shows talk about what it's like being the unusual parent. By unusual, I mean unconventional. Single, not married, homosexual, not the typical white picket fence kind of family. Sure, some explore how it's like to grow up in said household, but none really look at it from the parent's point of view. Which makes sense. If it's targeted at children, you'd want to focus more on the children's perspectives. Which is why it took me such a long time to realize how good Sherman and Mr. Peabody really is. It's a movie about what it's like to be an unconventional parent, specifically a single parent. Of course, there's the obvious reason why. Mr. Peabody is in fact single. He chose to adopt Sherman by himself and faced literal trials, but that's not the main reason. It's because they chose to make him an intelligent dog. I don't think it's meant to be derogatory. In fact, I see it as an artistic way of expressing how single parents feel in the eyes of others. Let me explain. There are two central conflicts in this movie. Mr. Peabody seems unfit to be a parent, and Sherman doesn't like being seen as his father's son because he's a dog. Both are very nicely interwoven, and it does a good job of making you not just invested in both characters, but both characters together. These narratives are essential for a movie about single parents because, of course, parents also care about how their children look at them. I'll start with the more obvious one. Mr. Peabody is one hell of a dad. If you get that reference, let's be friends. He is a certified genius who brought world peace, invented a time machine, a chef, a chiropractor, and an absolute banger mixologist. Of course, I probably forgot some other things he did there, but that's the point! He is so amazing, which reminds me of my own mom and other good single parents. But they have to be amazing. They are literally doing the job of two people, and a whole lot more if I'm being honest. But that's not the only thing that intrigues me about his genius brain. It's also how other people respond to it. He is an undisputed genius, and yet he faces so many obstacles from people who believe he's not good enough. He had to win the right to adopt Sherman in a court of law, and while yes, the judge did side with him, you have to admit that the eyebrow raise tells you he thinks Peabody may not be enough for the task. Penny's dad was so condescending towards Mr. Peabody, despite Penny being in the wrong. And let's not forget Miss Grunion, who seems hell-bent on making sure Mr. Peabody is revoked from being an adoptive parent. All these examples show how despite his many accolades, which is amazing, his status as a parent still puts people in doubt as to whether he's truly qualified. Yes, being a parent is one of the hardest jobs out there, but you don't see them call into question anyone else as a parent. It's specifically Mr. Peabody. And it's because, well, he's still viewed as a dog first and Peabody last. I think society really places parenthood as something to be fulfilled by a specific group of people, even if their children's safety is fully assured. Sherman is seen to be a normal boy, a little hyperactive, sure, but a normal elementary school kid. But they take any flaw out of him and project it onto Mr. Peabody as his parent. This often happens when the kid comes from a not-so-cookie-cutter families where people are more likely to point fingers at their home life rather than the child. And as a single parent, you need to work more than twice as hard to prove you belong in those PTA meetings, that you deserve to be respected, that you have every right to be that child's guardian. Because even if people can cognitively understand that your child is safe with you, they'll always poke and prod into every decision you make. Every mistake is amplified and based off the fact that you don't have a husband or wife. Mr. Peabody has to be extra nice without pissing Miss Grunion off because she represents a real threat to his parenthood if she feels like it. He also has to cater to Penny's parents exceedingly, to the point he plans out a whole 5-star Michelin meal and plays every instrument just so Penny's dad doesn't get mad at him. Even Sherman wonders whether all this planning was because someone much higher profile, like the goddamn president, was coming over, and not just another parent. And in the end, when Mr. Peabody does bite Miss Grunion, her glee just shows how she was looking for any excuse to put him into custody. Her visit wasn't done in good faith. She was just projecting her own preconceived notions, and as soon as she got a single sign, she ran with it. But if you pay attention closely, Mr. Peabody didn't bite her out of sheer frustration over the situation. It's only after you hear his son say that Miss Grunion was hurting him that he feels rage. Not for himself, but for his boy. That's a true father right there. What's even more heartbreaking is that often a lot of single parents do wish that their circumstances were much better. Some didn't choose to be single parents after all. Think of all the cases where the other parent left unexpectedly. When being put into custody and seeing how he personally was responsible for Sherman being bullied, and now he had to witness his father figure being taken away, Mr. Peabody absolutely felt that he failed as a parent. But none of this would have happened if the people around him were just better human beings. And this is the moment where the other storyline finally crosses paths.
What's that?
I'm a dog too!
Sherman is a somewhat typical boy with atypical parents. He loves his dad even though he knows other dads don't act like him, but he starts to feel the weight of being his child. He gets bullied in school, and the comment that upsets him the most, as he points out, was being called a dog. And this dog comment sticks with him and causes the rift between him and his dad. First, the reason Sherman bites Penny is because she calls him a dog and physically assaulted him. Then, Sherman is manipulated by Penny into driving the time machine because, as she puts it, he doesn't want to be obedient as a dog. Next, after finding out that Mr. Peabody intentionally did not tell him about Miss Grunion's intentions, he felt that he was seen as someone who couldn't handle it. He felt like he was not given the responsibility he deserves, like a pet, which is why after his dad tries to tell him to sit down, Sherman says he doesn't want to take orders like a dog. In a way, you could say that Sherman was a little ashamed of having a dog for a dad, because he didn't like being called one. Sure, he has always loved his dad, but being told he was a dog, albeit in a derogatory way, was something he absolutely hated, which tells me that he doesn't see dogs as something he wants to be either. In my opinion, this idea of being a dog serves dual purposes. One, being the shame of having a dog as a parent, and two, being the manifestation of feeling overprotected by his father. If you notice, this dog comment really builds up whenever Sherman's ideas are shut down passively or actively. It's when he's told that he can't drive the way back when he wants to. It's when he's told that certain things don't need to be shared with him, like Miss Grunion by his dad. Good owners of pets don't treat their pets like their equals. They make choices for them for the sake of their well-being, and this is what Sherman feels. And this kind of behavior can often be seen in single-parent households, especially when you consider that the only parent probably feels too overwhelmed to spare enough brain cells to supervise their kid doing something mildly dangerous. But in the end, as Mr. Peabody is being dragged away, Sherman sort of voices his realization of his true inner feelings. He says that the only mistake his dad ever made was having him, which, holy shit, hits hard. And when Miss Grunion agrees and says that a dog could never be a father to a boy, Sherman hits back with, "But I'm a dog too," line, embracing his dog ethnicity. Ethnicity? Identity? I don't know. But basically, he reclaims being a dog's son, and in a way accepts his doghood beyond just an adoptive relationship. He lists out all the good things he has done for him, which reminds me of a dog's characteristics. He is proud to be his son, blood related or not. And that's the cool thing about this movie, is that it not only shows us a problem, but also provides a solution. If it was just Sherman on his dad's side, this movie wouldn't have been resolved. Instead, it's the collective effort of everyone raising their hand in unison, chanting that they're a dog too, that provides Mr. Peabody the respect he truly deserves. That and 3 presidential pardons, which once again is so crazy that one outburst, which honestly shouldn't have been labeled an outburst because it was motivated out of anger for his child's safety, is so severe for a single parent that he needs not 1, but 3 presidential pardons from the more well-known US presidents from the past who are already dead to actually be let free. In the end, the reason they get a happy ending is because other people are able to see Mr. Peabody for the man, or I guess dog, that he truly is. The only way to overcome social stigma effectively is to remove society's endorsement. We need to stop looking at people in their boxes, but as their true individual self first and parent later. We make so many preconceived notions about parents just based off of the first 5 seconds of seeing them. Maybe you see a mom with her infant screaming in the train and just sighing heavily, and you might think, how on earth can she be a good parent? Maybe you judge her parenthood by her child's behavior. Maybe it's based off the fact she doesn't seem to have the child's father next to her. But there are a million understandable reasons for this 5-second behavior. Maybe she's sleep deprived. Maybe she just needs to let go of control for a second so she can pull herself together long enough to get him to stop crying 5 seconds later. Maybe letting him cry for 5 seconds without giving a reaction would actually de-incentivize him from crying. That's a real thing, look it up. Yes, it can hurt to be near a screaming child, and yes, you can be annoyed, but know that the parent is a real human with a real life. Good parents are not seen in 5 seconds. Only bad parents could ever be. Real good parents are shown through their child's decision throughout their lives, and especially in adulthood when they gain independence. Yes, there are obvious drawbacks to being a child of an unusual parent, but at the end of the day, a good parent parents despite their circumstances. They make the most of what they've got, and they don't excuse their behavior with their background. They're the Mr. Peabodys of this world, working twice as hard as everyone else just to be given half the recognition. They're more heavily scrutinized, and their children can wish for better situations. But at the end of the day, while not everyone can be a good parent can come from anywhere. I'm a dog too.